Starting off, we have a movie within a movie. Hello again, time for another movie review by the Movie Master. We start off with a scene that actually inspired the beginning of Scream 2 for anyone who has seen any part of the Scream series. Well, this film, or at least this opening sequence, inspired that opening sequence. And as we can see, the girl who just got a knife to the back had an engagement ring on, which means she's soon set to be married. And the movie, He Knows You're Alone, the first movie of Tom Hanks and Diana Baron. The movie is about a killer who goes around killing and stalking brides who are about to be married, like this one.
What a complete and total dick! I mean, seriously, why would you kill someone the day of their wedding? Really? They've been waiting for this day for so long and you're just going to murder them?
So to start off with, we see the main character, who's also a bride-to-be, Amy. Her fiancé is on his way out of town for the weekend for a bachelor party, and we meet her friends, one of whom is having an affair with a professor, and she goes around town. Unbeknownst to her, she's being followed by the killer of this particular story. Now, why is this a unique slasher film? Well, to start off with, it was the beginning of a trend where the films would not only have long names, but the killer would also stalk very beautiful, very young women. And in this case, they just happen to be brides. And here we see the ex-boyfriend of the main character who wants to get back together with her, and everyone who is surrounded by this particular young bride-to-be slowly dies, one by one. No particular reason why the killer should go after some of these guys, like the best friend who's having the affair with the professor. There's really no rhyme or reason. It's just more or less anyone who might get in his way will just die. Like I said, this was the first film of the starting trend, of which people just randomly died in this film. No rhyme or reason to it other than that they were connected to the killer's main objective. And first movie starring Tom Hanks. Well, not starring, but has him as a somewhat of a main character. Actually, it's kind of interesting. His character was supposed to be one of the random individuals who would die in this particular slasher film, but the filmmakers thought he was too charismatic, as we'll go on to see in his long career, that they just couldn't kill him off because he was so charismatic. The film has, as a standard slasher film, has all of the remnants in it. There's nudity, there's drugs, there's alcohol, there's all that good stuff, and pretty much going on with the stereotypical slasher film formula. Anyone who does any of those things will die. Another thing that this film is actually famous for is this particular scene where the girlfriend has her head in the fish tank. As a result, this film got famous for that one particular scene, and would actually be mixed up with another film that had came out a few years previously, which was When a Stranger Calls. Despite the fact that the storylines have nothing to do with one another, but since both of the films had particularly long titles, people would regularly mix up the films. Actually, personal note, my mom actually did that when she went to go see this film with my dad 30 years prior. Anyways, the film is starting to come to a close. We are slowly approaching the climax. The girl is going to the ex-boyfriend, hoping that she'll protect him. We see the fiance of the bride who got killed earlier in the film, who also turns out to be a cop. She discovers one of her friends is dead. This, like I said, was probably one of the first slasher films to really start to get into this formula of people being stalked and a beautiful woman coming towards the climax of the film, and she will most likely be the only survivor, the only person left standing, and we see her more or less as a survivor, which is pretty important for the horror movie formula, of which we would see for about 2 decades to come afterwards. Anyways, she's now going to marry Marvin, and things might not turn out so great for Amy in the end, after all.
So in conclusion, for a slasher film, pretty good, actually. Unique storyline in that the fact that the killings didn't take place on a particular day, which was, at this time, one of the more trends with the slasher films at the horror movie genre when it was first starting out. It was always on a particular day. You had Christmas, you had April Fool's Day, you had Friday the 13th coming out the same year that this came out, you had Halloween, which came out 2 years before. What made this interesting was it didn't have a particular day. And what set it apart from A Stranger Calls is that, well, the character who was obsessive on one particular person. But in A Stranger Calls, he had idolized on this one particular girl for years and just was going out to kill her again. In this one particular one, she could have been any bride who was getting married. So, overall, not bad. It was still getting a start out in the horror movie industry. The next decade of slasher and horror movies that came along are just as complicated, just as good, and follow a certain formula, but I am willing to find and poke holes in those formulas. See you in the next review.